The chatter of the crowded employment office in Opal, Wyoming fell to a hushed silence as Olivia Turner pushed through the door, the uneven rhythm of her steps announcing her arrival before she was fully visible. It was May of 1883, and for the third time that week, she had come seeking work, her right leg dragging slightly behind her, the legacy of a childhood bout with polio that had twisted her limb and left her with what the townsfolk called her affliction. "Miss Turner," the employment agent, Mr. Hodges, cleared his throat uncomfortably as she approached his desk. "I'm afraid there's still nothing suitable for your situation." Olivia's green eyes flashed with a fire that belied the exhaustion etched across her sun-freckled face. At 24, she had already heard every gentle rejection and witnessed every averted gaze that came with her condition. Ever since her father had died 6 months ago, leaving nothing but debts and their small homestead, she had been fighting to stay afloat. "Mr. Hodges, I can read and write better than most. I can keep accounts, I can cook, I understand, Miss Turner," he interrupted, lowering his voice as other job seekers pretended not to listen. "But the mercantile needs someone who can reach the high shelves. The schoolhouse already hired Miss Peterson, and the hotel requires someone who can." He trailed off, gesturing vaguely at her leg. "Someone who can move quickly," Olivia finished for him, her voice steady despite the humiliation burning in her chest. "Someone without a crippled leg." Mr. Hodges winced at her bluntness, but didn't deny it. "Perhaps if you waited another week." "I've waited 3 already," Olivia said, adjusting the worn shawl around her shoulders. "And my supplies won't last much longer." As she turned to leave, dignity wrapped around her like armor, a deep voice cut through the office. "I hear you're looking for work." The crowd parted to reveal a tall man leaning against the doorframe, his broad shoulders blocking much of the sunlight streaming in from outside. Wade Jackson removed his hat, revealing sun-weathered skin and eyes the color of the Wyoming sky. Dust covered his riding clothes, and a week's worth of stubble darkened his jaw. "I am," Olivia replied cautiously, aware of the stares their exchange was attracting. The man nodded, appraising her with a directness that might have been offensive had it not been so matter-of-fact. "I'm Wade Jackson. My ranch is 5 miles north of town. Lost my housekeeper last month when she married the blacksmith's son." He paused, his gaze briefly dropping to her leg before meeting her eyes again. "Could use someone who knows their way around a kitchen and can keep accounts." Mr. Hodges stepped forward, his expression concerned. "Now, Mr. Jackson, Miss Turner here has certain limitations that might make ranch work difficult." Wade's expression hardened as he looked at the employment agent. "I didn't ask you, Hodges." He turned back to Olivia. "The position includes room and board, $20 a month and Sundays off if you want them." Olivia straightened, ignoring the twinge in her hip. "Mr. Jackson, I appreciate the offer, but I wouldn't want you hiring me out of pity." Something like respect flickered in his eyes. "Miss Turner, my ranch needs someone who understands struggle, not someone who gives up at the first sign of hardship. From what I hear, you've been running your father's place alone since he passed. That tells me more about your capabilities than that leg does." He settled his hat back on his head. "Wagon leaves in an hour if you're interested. I'll be at the general store." With that, he turned and walked out, leaving whispers in his wake. Olivia stood frozen, pride warring with desperation. $20 a month was more than she could hope to earn elsewhere, and the homestead was slipping through her fingers with each passing day. "Well," Mr. Hodges said, his tone suggesting he thought Wade had temporarily lost his mind, "that's unexpected." "Yes," Olivia murmured. "It certainly is." An hour later, with her few belongings packed into a worn carpetbag, Olivia found herself climbing awkwardly into Wade Jackson's wagon outside Pearson's general store. She had spent the previous hour settling matters with the bank regarding her father's property, arranging to rent it out rather than sell, holding on to the last piece of her family with stubborn determination. "You made it," Wade observed, offering a hand to help her up. When she hesitated, he added, "It's not charity, Miss Turner, just common courtesy." Reluctantly, she accepted his help, settling beside him on the wooden bench. "Thank you, Mr. Jackson." "Wade," he corrected, clicking his tongue to set the horses in motion. "We don't stand on ceremony at the Broken J." "The Broken J, my ranch," he explained, guiding the wagon through Opal's dusty Main Street. "Named it that when I bought it 5 years ago. Place was falling apart, barely worth the paper I signed." A hint of pride entered his voice. "It's coming along now." Olivia watched the town recede behind them, anxiety and hope tangling in her chest. "Why did you really offer me this position, Mr. Wade?" He kept his eyes on the road ahead. "Truth, always. Heard about you from Doc Sanders. Said you nursed your father through his final months without complaint. Said you've got more grit than most men he knows." Wade adjusted his hat against the late afternoon sun. "And I needed someone who won't run off to get married the moment a suitable prospect comes along." Olivia couldn't help the short, bitter laugh that escaped her. "Well, you needn't worry about that. Men don't typically court women with defective limbs." Wade's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond immediately. When he did, his voice was measured. "My mother had a withered arm from birth. Couldn't lift it above her shoulder. Raised 4 boys, ran a household, and helped my father build a life from nothing in Montana Territory." He glanced at her. Never once heard her call herself defective. Shame colored Olivia's cheeks. "I apologize. I didn't mean no need," he interrupted. "Just setting things straight from the beginning." They fell into silence as the wagon rolled through the Wyoming landscape. Spring had painted the prairie with wildflowers, their colors vibrant against the endless green. In the distance, the mountains stood majestic, still capped with snow that would feed the rivers through summer. "It's beautiful out here," Olivia said softly. "It is," Wade agreed. "Hard country, but honest." As the wagon crested a hill, the Broken J came into view. A modest 2-story house stood at the center of the property, flanked by a large barn, a bunkhouse, and various outbuildings. Cattle grazed in the distance, and a small creek wound through the property, glinting in the late afternoon light. "It's larger than I expected," Olivia admitted. "Not as big as some, bigger than others," Wade replied. "Got 8 hands working for me, plus Emmett, my foreman. They stay in the bunkhouse, except for Emmett, who has a cabin near the creek." As they approached, a weathered man with iron-gray hair emerged from the barn. He raised a hand in greeting, then frowned slightly upon seeing Olivia. "That's Emmett," Wade explained. "Been with me since I bought the place. Good man, though he takes some getting used to." The wagon rolled to a stop in front of the house, and Olivia felt a flutter of nervousness. This would be her home now, at least, until she could find something better or save enough to return to her father's homestead. Wade jumped down from the wagon and came around to her side, offering his hand again. This time, Olivia took it without hesitation, navigating the descent carefully. Emmett approached, his gaze taking in Olivia's limping gait without comment. "This the new housekeeper, Olivia Turner. This is Emmett Hayes," Wade said by way of introduction. "Emmett, Miss Turner will be taking over the house duties." Emmett nodded curtly. "Madam. Hope you can cook better than the last one. Her biscuits could have served as horseshoes." Despite herself, Olivia smiled. "I'll do my best, Mr. Hayes." "Just Emmett," he corrected, then turned to Wade. "Boyd's back from town. Says the Carter outfit is hiring away cowboys with offers of higher wages." Wade frowned. We'll discuss it later. He picked up Olivia's carpet bag. Let me show you the house. The ranch house was sturdy and practical, with a large kitchen dominating the first floor, along with a dining room and a small study. Upstairs were 4 bedrooms, one of which Wade indicated would be hers. It's not fancy, he said, setting her bag down on a simple bed covered with a patchwork quilt, but it's clean. The room was indeed clean if sparse, with whitewashed walls, a small dresser, and a window overlooking the ranch yard. A plain rag rug covered part of the wooden floor, and a washstand with a pitcher and bowl stood in one corner. It's perfect, Olivia said, meaning it. After months of uncertainty, the simple room felt like a sanctuary. Wade nodded, seeming relieved. Bathrooms down the hall. Got indoor plumbing put in last year, pride of the ranch. Hot water's a luxury we have on Saturday nights and special occasions. He cleared his throat. I'll let you get settled. Dinner's usually at 6, but since it's your first day, don't worry about cooking. Emmett's wife sends over a stew on Tuesdays. I can start right away, Olivia protested. I don't need special treatment. Something like approval flashed in Wade's eyes. Wasn't offering any, just being practical. You'll need to know where everything is before you can cook a proper meal. He moved toward the door. Rest up. Tomorrow comes early around here. After he left, Olivia sank onto the bed, the events of the day catching up with her. She had a job, a roof over her head, and $20 coming at the end of the month. It was more than she had dared hope for that morning. Unpacking her meager belongings took little time. She placed her mother's silver hairbrush on the dresser, arranged her 2 dresses in the small wardrobe, and set her father's Bible on the bedside table. The final item she removed from her bag was a small, framed photograph her parents on their wedding day, young and hopeful, before disease and hardship had carved lines into their faces. I'm trying, Pa, she whispered to the image of her father. I'm not giving up. As promised, dinner was a simple affair of beef stew and cornbread, delivered by a freckle-faced boy who introduced himself as Tobias, Emmett's youngest son. Wade ate quickly and spoke little, seeming preoccupied with ranch matters. After the meal, he retreated to his study, leaving Olivia to explore the kitchen that would be her domain. It was well equipped, if somewhat disorganized. Cast iron pots hung from hooks, a large wood stove dominated one wall, and a pantry held supplies that would need inventorying. The sink had a pump that brought water directly from the well, a luxury that made Olivia smile, remembering the endless buckets she had carried at home. She was wiping down the counters when Wade reappeared in the doorway, a ledger under his arm. You don't need to do that tonight, he said. Olivia shrugged. I want to familiarize myself with the kitchen, he nodded, watching her for a moment. Most of the hands breakfast at 5:30. I'm usually in by 6. Simple fare is fine, they burn through it fast enough. I'll be ready, she assured him. Wade seemed on the verge of saying something else, then changed his mind. Good night then, Miss Turner. Good night, Mr. Jackson. Wade, he corrected again, the ghost of a smile touching his lips before he disappeared down the hallway. Alone in the quiet kitchen, Olivia allowed herself a moment of stillness. Beyond the windows, the vast Wyoming night had fallen, stars piercing the darkness with fierce clarity. In the distance, she could hear the low voices of the cowboys in the bunkhouse and the occasional nicker of horses in the barn. For the first time in months, the weight on her shoulders felt a little lighter. This wasn't charity. This was work she could do, work that mattered. And if the ache in her leg was worse than usual from the day's exertions, well, that was a price she was willing to pay for this chance. Morning came with the first pale streaks of dawn painting the eastern sky. Olivia had been awake for an hour already, stoking the cook stove and preparing breakfast for the ranch hands. By the time Boots began stomping on the porch, she had platters of flapjacks, eggs and bacon ready, coffee brewing and biscuits browning in the oven. The cowboys filed in, hats in hands, their curious glances quickly giving way to appreciation as they saw the spread before them. Emmett introduced them briefly: Boyd, Charlie, Frank, the Sampson brothers, Luke and Matthew, Old Pete, Young Pete, no relation, and Miguel. They were a weathered bunch, ranging from Miguel's 19 years to Old Pete's 60-odd, their faces telling stories of sun, wind, and hard work. "Miss Turner's our new housekeeper," Emmett explained gruffly. "Treat her with respect or answer to me." His gaze lingered meaningfully on the younger men. "Yes, sir," they chorused, before falling on the food with the focused intensity of men who burned thousands of calories daily in physical labor. Wade entered last, nodding approval at the scene before him. He took his place at the head of the table, accepting the coffee Olivia poured for him with a quiet thank you. "Miss Turner," he said after taking a sip, "these men usually take lunch in the fields, sandwiches or something similar that travels well." "I'll prepare something suitable," she promised, already making mental notes. The cowboys ate quickly, complimenting her cooking between mouthfuls, then filed out to begin their day's work. Wade lingered, watching as Olivia collected plates with efficient movements, her limp more pronounced after standing all morning. "The leg bothering you?" he asked bluntly. Olivia stiffened, then forced herself to relax. "No more than usual." Wade's expression suggested he didn't believe her, but he didn't press. "I'll be checking the north pasture today with Emmett. We've had some trouble with wolves getting at the calves. Should be back by supper." After he left, Olivia attacked the morning's dishes, then began preparing lunch for the men. She found bread, cheese, and cold beef in the pantry and set about making substantial sandwiches. By 10 o'clock, Tobias had arrived to collect the food bundles, his freckled face brightening when Olivia included a bag of molasses cookies she'd discovered in a canister. "These are good, madam," he said around a mouthful of cookies she'd insisted he sample. "Ma makes them for special occasions." "Then please thank your mother for sharing them," Olivia replied, smiling at the boys' enthusiasm. With the men fed and the kitchen temporarily put to rights, Olivia turned her attention to the rest of the house. It was clean enough but showed the neglect of months without a woman's touch. She spent the afternoon dusting, sweeping, and learning the rhythms of her new home. In the study, she found Wade's bookshelf stocked with volumes on cattle breeding, veterinary medicine, and to her surprise, several novels by Dickens and Twain. The ledgers on his desk were meticulously kept, but could use reorganization. She resisted the urge to sort them, knowing she hadn't earned that right yet. By late afternoon, her leg was throbbing fiercely, but she pushed through the pain to begin supper preparations. The pantry yielded potatoes, onions, and carrots to accompany a beef roast she found in the springhouse. As she worked, she hummed softly, songs her mother had taught her long ago. She was so absorbed in her cooking that she didn't hear Wade enter until he spoke. "Something smells good." Olivia turned, startled, a knife still in hand. "I didn't hear you come in." Wade stood in the doorway, trail dust coating his clothes, his face lined with fatigue. "Found tracks near the creek. Lost 2 calves already." "I'm sorry to hear that," Olivia said, turning back to her vegetables. "Supper will be ready in about an hour if that suits." "It does." He hesitated, then added, "The men are talking about your cooking. Said it's the best breakfast they've had since coming to the Broken J." A flush of pleasure warmed Olivia's cheeks. "They're easily impressed then." "Wait until they taste my apple pie." Something like a smile crossed Wade's face. "I'll look forward to it." He lingered a moment longer before disappearing upstairs, presumably to clean up. Supper that night was a quiet affair, just the two of them at the large table. Wade ate with the focused appreciation of a man who had worked hard and was genuinely hungry, while Olivia found herself stealing glances at him between bites, curious about this taciturn man who had given her a chance when no one else would. "My compliments," Wade said, setting down his fork after cleaning his plate. "That was exactly what was needed after a long day." "Thank you," Olivia replied, pleased despite herself. "I enjoy cooking. My mother taught me." "She taught you well." Wade leaned back in his chair, studying her with those direct blue eyes. "How did it happen? Your leg?" The question was abrupt but not unkind. Still, Olivia tensed. "Polio when I was 7. The doctor said I was lucky some children never walk again." Wade nodded thoughtfully. "Does it pain you much? Some days more than others?" She began gathering plates, a clear signal that she didn't wish to discuss it further. Wade accepted the boundary, rising to help clear the table despite her protests. "My house, my rules," he said simply. "And I wasn't raised to sit while others work." They settled into a routine over the next few weeks. Olivia rose before dawn to prepare breakfast, packed lunches for the men, then spent her days maintaining the house and preparing evening meals. Wade worked from sunrise to sunset, often returning covered in dust and sweat, his muscular frame betraying the physical demands of ranching. They shared supper each night, their conversations gradually extending beyond ranch matters. Olivia learned that Wade had come west from Pennsylvania after the war, working as a cowhand before saving enough to buy the struggling Broken Jay. He had no family left, his parents gone, 2 brothers lost to the war, a third to influenza. "What about you?" he asked one evening in early June as they sat on the porch after supper, watching a spectacular sunset paint the sky in fiery hues. "Your family," Olivia's hands stilled in their mending. "My mother died when I was 16. Consumption. My father never really recovered from losing her. He tried his best, but—" She paused, remembering her father's slow decline. "When his heart gave out last fall, I think part of him was ready to join her." Wade was quiet for a long moment. "It's a hard thing being left behind." "Yes," she agreed softly. "It is." The understanding that passed between them in that moment felt more intimate than any words could have been. 2 people who knew what it meant to endure, to keep going when it might be easier to surrender. As June bloomed into July, the ranch entered its busiest season. The cattle needed moving to higher pastures, hay needed cutting and storing, and 100 other tasks demanded attention. Wade and the men worked from first light until well after dark, often coming in too exhausted for more than a few words at supper. Olivia increased her own efforts, rising even earlier to ensure hot breakfasts and substantial packed lunches. She began riding out to the fields herself, balancing baskets of food on the gentle mare Wade had assigned for her use, bringing cold water and occasionally lemonade to the men working under the merciless summer sun. The first time she appeared at the north pasture, her mare picking its way carefully across the uneven ground, Wade looked up from branding a calf with an expression of surprise that quickly turned to concern. "You shouldn't be riding out here alone," he said, wiping sweat from his brow as he approached. "Your leg is perfectly capable of sitting astride a horse," she finished for him, dismounting carefully and reaching for the baskets tied behind her saddle. "I brought fresh water and biscuits. Thought you might appreciate something more substantial than sandwiches today." The other cowboys crowded around gratefully, their initial surprise at her appearance giving way to genuine appreciation. Emmett, never one for flowery speech, summed it up. "This is mighty thoughtful, Miss Turner." Wade said nothing more about her leg, but Olivia caught him watching her as she remounted, his expression unreadable. That evening at supper, he finally spoke his mind. "That was a kind thing you did today, but unnecessary. The ride must have been painful for you." Olivia met his gaze steadily. "Mr. Jackson Wade, I would appreciate it if you would stop making assumptions about what I can and cannot do based on my leg." His eyebrows rose. "I'm not—" "You are," she interrupted firmly. "I know my limitations better than anyone. Yes, riding is sometimes uncomfortable. So is standing all day in the kitchen. But I choose to do both because they need doing and because I'm perfectly capable." Wade studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Fair enough. I apologize." "Apology accepted," she said, her tone softening. "Now, would you like apple pie or not?" A rare smile transformed his face. "I believe I would." From that day forward, something shifted between them. Wade began to include her more fully in ranch discussions, valuing her observations and suggestions. When she proposed reorganizing his chaotic bookkeeping system, he not only agreed but cleared space in the study for her to work alongside him in the evenings. These quiet hours together, working by lamplight after the day's labor was done, became Olivia's favorite part of each day. Wade proved to be not just intelligent, but surprisingly well-read, often referencing books she had never expected a rancher to know. "My mother insisted on education," he explained one night when she commented on his knowledge of Shakespeare. "Said just because we lived in the wilderness didn't mean our minds had to be wild too." "She sounds remarkable," Olivia said, smiling at the obvious affection in his voice. "She was," Wade agreed, his gaze lingering on Olivia's face a moment longer than necessary before returning to his ledgers. July faded into August, bringing with it scorching days and the occasional violent thunderstorm that sent cattle scattering and cowboys cursing. During one such storm, Olivia stood at the kitchen window, watching lightning split the sky as rain lashed against the glass. The men were out trying to secure a herd that had panicked, and worry gnawed at her as the hours passed with no sign of their return. When the back door finally burst open around midnight, Wade staggered in, drenched and exhausted, with young Miguel leaning heavily against him, blood streaming from a gash on the boy's forehead. "Chair," Wade ordered tersely, and Olivia rushed to pull one out from the table. "What happened?" she asked, already moving to fetch clean towels and the medical kit she kept ready. "Lightning spooked his horse," Wade explained, easing Miguel into the chair. "Threw him against a rock, might need stitches." Olivia assessed the wound with practiced eyes. "It's deep, but I can manage it. I stitched up Pa more times than I can count." She turned to Miguel, whose bronze skin had paled considerably. "This will hurt, but I'll be quick." The young cowboy nodded weakly. "Gracias, Miss Turner." Wade watched as Olivia cleaned the wound with sure, gentle hands, then prepared needle and catgut. Her fingers remained steady as she placed neat stitches, her concentration absolute despite Miguel's occasional grunts of pain. "There," she said finally, cutting the last thread. "Keep it clean and come see me tomorrow so I can check for infection." Miguel touched the bandage gingerly. "You have a good hand, Miss Turner, barely felt it." "That's a lie," she said with a smile, "but I appreciate the sentiment. Now off to bed with you." After the young cowboy had gone, Olivia turned to find Wade still watching her, an odd expression on his face. "You're soaked through," she observed, reaching for another towel. "You'll catch your death." Wade accepted the towel but didn't move to dry himself. "Where did you learn to do that?" "Do what?" she asked, busying herself with cleaning up the bloodied cloths. "Stitch a wound like that. Steady hands even with him flinching." Olivia shrugged. "Necessity. After Ma died, someone had to patch Pa up when he came home hurt, and I've had practice staying steady through pain." Understanding dawned in Wade's eyes. "Your leg." "Yes," she said simply. "Now please go change before you become ill. I'll make some hot coffee." He hesitated, then nodded, disappearing upstairs. When he returned in dry clothes, his damp hair curling slightly at the temples, Olivia had coffee waiting and bread toasting on the stove. "The others?" she asked as he sank into a chair at the table. "All accounted for. Miguel got the worst of it. We lost a few head to the ravine, but most of the herd is secure." Wade wrapped his hands around the coffee mug, his knuckles raw and scraped. "Thank you for helping him." "Of course," Olivia said, setting a plate of buttered toast before him. "I'm just glad it wasn't worse." They sat in companionable silence, the storm gradually moving eastward, its fury spent. In the quiet aftermath, with rain still pattering gently against the roof, Olivia became acutely aware of Wade's presence across the table, the breadth of his shoulders, the strong line of his jaw, the way his eyes reflected the lamplight. "You should get some rest," he said eventually, his voice low. "It's late." "So should you," she countered, Wade's mouth quirked in a half-smile. "I will, just need to finish this first." He raised his mug in a small salute. Olivia nodded, rising from her chair. As she passed him on her way to the stairs, she impulsively placed a hand on his shoulder. "I'm glad you're safe." She felt him tense slightly beneath her touch, then relax. "Thank you, Olivia." It was the first time he had used her given name, and something about the way he said it with a quiet reverence made her heart flutter in a way she hadn't experienced in years. Not trusting herself to speak, she simply squeezed his shoulder gently before continuing to her room. That night, as she lay awake listening to the diminishing storm, Olivia confronted a truth she had been avoiding for weeks. She was falling in love with Wade Jackson, a man who had hired her out of practicality, who saw her as a capable employee, perhaps even a friend, but surely nothing more. Men didn't court crippled women. Wade himself had said he wanted someone who wouldn't run off to get married. The irony wasn't lost on her. She resolved to guard her heart more carefully. This position at the Broken J was the best opportunity she could have hoped for security, respect, meaningful work. She wouldn't jeopardize that by nurturing impossible dreams. August crept toward September, and the rhythms of the ranch shifted again as preparation for the coming winter began in earnest. Hay was stacked in towering mounds, preserves were put up, and repairs were made to buildings before the first snows arrived. Olivia threw herself into these preparations, canning vegetables from the kitchen garden, smoking meat, and ensuring the pantry was well stocked. If she sometimes caught Wade watching her with an inscrutable expression, she pretended not to notice, focusing instead on the tasks at hand. One crisp September evening, as golden light slanted across the ranch yard, Wade found her in the garden, harvesting the last of the season's tomatoes. "Need a hand?" he offered, crouching beside her despite his obvious fatigue from a day spent mending fences. "I wouldn't turn it down," Olivia replied with a smile, handing him a basket. "The red ones only, please. The green ones I'll pickle tomorrow." They worked side by side in comfortable silence, the only sounds the soft thump of tomatoes being placed in baskets and the distant lowing of cattle. The air was cool, carrying the scent of pine from the mountains and the earthy richness of the garden soil. "I've been meaning to ask," Wade said eventually, his eyes on his task. "What are your plans for winter?" Olivia's hand stilled momentarily. "My plans." "Will you be staying on at the Broken J, or do you intend to return to town once the weather turns?" The question caught her off guard. "I hadn't thought about leaving, unless you're suggesting my services won't be needed in winter." Wade looked up quickly. "No, that's not," he frowned, seemingly frustrated with himself. "I'm asking this badly. Just say what you mean, Wade, Olivia suggested gently, resuming her harvesting. He drew a deep breath. I hoped you would stay, not just for winter, but indefinitely. Olivia's heart skipped a beat, but she kept her expression neutral. As your housekeeper? Yes, he said, then immediately shook his head. No, not just that. He set down his basket and turned to face her fully, his expression more open than she had ever seen it. Olivia, I find myself thinking about you at the most inconvenient times, when I'm mending fences, when I'm checking cattle, when I should be focusing on 1,000 other things. He ran a hand through his hair, dislodging his hat. I've never been good with words, but I know when something matters. And you matter to me. Olivia sat back on her heels, her throat suddenly tight. Wade, you don't have to say anything now, he interrupted, retrieving his hat and turning it nervously in his hands. I know this might be unexpected. I just wanted you to know where I stand before winter sets in and we're all trapped in the house together. A laugh escaped her, part disbelief, part joy. That's a practical consideration. The corner of his mouth lifted. I'm a practical man. Yes, she agreed softly. You are. She hesitated, then decided honesty was the only fair response to his vulnerability. I care for you too, Wade. More than I should, perhaps. Hope kindled in his eyes. There's no should about feelings, Olivia. Isn't there? She challenged gently. You hired me to work, not to become. Emotionally entangled. And beyond that, there's the matter of my leg. I'm not. If you say whole or any similar nonsense, I might actually lose my temper, Wade interrupted, his voice firm but kind. Your leg is part of you, yes, but it doesn't define you any more than the scar on my back defines me. Olivia blinked in surprise. You have a scar, shrapnel during the war, he explained briefly. Not the point. The point is I see you, Olivia Turner, all of you, and I admire what I see. He reached out tentatively, taking her soil-stained hand in his. I'm not asking for any decisions now, just think about it, about us. Olivia looked down at their joined hands, his tanned and calloused, her smaller but equally marked by work. I will, she promised. Wade nodded, seemingly satisfied. He helped her gather the remaining tomatoes, then carried both baskets back to the house, leaving her at the kitchen door with a gentle squeeze of her hand, and a look that contained more warmth than words could express. That night, alone in her room, Olivia allowed herself to consider possibilities she had long since dismissed. Could there be a future for her that included not just work and independence, but love as well? Could this taciturn, honorable man truly see beyond her disability to the woman beneath? The questions followed her into dreams filled with tomato gardens and thunder, Wade's hands and endless Wyoming skies. The weeks that followed held a new undercurrent of awareness between them. Nothing overt changed in their daily interactions. Wade was too respectful, and Olivia too cautious for that, but small moments accumulated like stones in a cairn, marking a path forward. Wade began finding reasons to be in the house more often, offering to help with tasks that had previously been Olivia's domain alone. He fixed the squeaking pantry door without being asked, built additional shelves for her preserves, and ensured the woodbox was always full despite the fact that it was traditionally a chore for the youngest ranch hand. For her part, Olivia found herself lingering in his study after their evening work was complete, their conversations extending well past the practical matters of ranch management. She learned of his time in the war, the nightmares that still occasionally woke him, and his dreams for the broken jay. In turn, she shared stories of her childhood before the polio, her father's gentle wisdom, and her own quiet hopes for the future. The ranch hands noticed the change, of course. Emmett's knowing looks became increasingly pointed, and young Miguel could barely suppress his grin, when Wade complimented Olivia's cooking more effusively than usual. Old Pete, with the wisdom of his years, simply nodded approvingly when he saw them walking together in the evenings, inspecting the property as the sun set. October arrived with its brilliant palette of autumn colors and the first biting chill of approaching winter. The cattle were brought down from the high pastures, the last of the harvest was gathered, and preparations for winter intensified. It was during this busy time that Olivia received an unexpected letter from town. Mr. Hodges, the employment agent, wrote to inform her that her father's homestead had attracted the interest of a buyer, a cattle baron looking to expand his holdings. The offer was substantial, enough to give Olivia a comfortable start elsewhere, should she choose to sell. The letter left her conflicted. The homestead represented her last tangible connection to her parents, yet the practical value of such a sum couldn't be ignored. More than that, the decision forced her to consider her future in concrete terms. If she sold, would she stay at the Broken J? And if so, in what capacity? Wade found her on the porch that evening, the letter still in her hands as she watched the sun sink behind the mountains. "Bad news?" he asked, settling beside her on the wooden bench. Olivia handed him the letter wordlessly, watching his face as he read it. His expression remained neutral, but she noticed the slight tightening of his jaw. "That's a generous offer," he said finally, returning the paper to her. "It is," she agreed. "More than the property is worth, honestly." Wade was quiet for a moment. "Are you considering it?" "I don't know," Olivia admitted. "That land is all I have left of my family, but it's just sitting there and the money could." She trailed off, uncertain how to continue. "Could give you options," Wade finished for her. "Independence," she nodded, studying his profile in the fading light. "What would you do?" He considered the question seriously. "Land matters, roots matter, but so does building a future." His eyes met hers. "I can't tell you what's right, Olivia, but I can tell you that whatever you decide, you have a place here at the Broken J, for as long as you want it." The sincerity in his voice made her throat tighten. "Thank you." They sat in silence as darkness fell completely, the stars emerging one by one in the vast Wyoming sky. When Wade finally spoke again, his voice was soft but certain. "There's something else I should say before you make any decisions." Olivia turned to face him, her heart suddenly racing. "Yes, I love you." The words were simple, unadorned, but spoken with such quiet conviction that they seemed to hang in the air between them, weightier than any flowery declaration could have been. "I didn't expect to, didn't plan on it, but there it is." Emotion welled in Olivia's chest, too powerful for immediate words. When she didn't immediately respond, Wade continued, his gaze steady on her face. "I'm not asking for anything you're not ready to give. I just thought you should know as you're weighing your options. The Broken J needs you. I need you not just as a housekeeper or bookkeeper, but as yourself, as Olivia." "Wade," she finally managed, her voice thick with feeling. "I love you too." "I've been trying not to, trying to be practical," but the rest of her sentence was lost as he leaned forward and kissed her, one hand coming up to cradle her face with unexpected gentleness. Olivia melted into the kiss, her doubts momentarily silenced by the rightness of being in his arms. When they finally parted, Wade rested his forehead against hers. "I'm not very good at this," he admitted. "Haven't had much practice with courting." Olivia laughed softly. "And I have. I think we're both novices here." "Then we'll learn together," he said, taking her hand and pressing a kiss to her palm. "If you're willing." "I am," she whispered. "But Wade, we should be clear about what this means. My leg won't improve. There will be days when I can barely walk, when I'll need help with the simplest tasks. And there will be days when the memories of war wake me before dawn, when I'm short-tempered and withdrawn." he countered. Days when the ranch demands everything I have and more. We all have our burdens, Olivia. The question is whether we want to carry them alone or together. Put that way, the answer seemed obvious. Together, she said, her voice stronger now. I choose together. The smile that transformed Wade's face was like sunrise breaking over the mountains, rare and breathtaking. He kissed her again, more confidently this time, and Olivia allowed herself to believe in the future taking shape between them. The next morning, Olivia wrote to Mr. Hodges declining the offer on her father's homestead. Instead, she proposed a continued rental arrangement, with the proceeds to be used for the property's maintenance. The land would remain hers, honoring her past, while she built a new future at the Broken J. News of their courtship spread quickly through the ranch. The hands offered Wade gruff congratulations, and treated Olivia with a new layer of respect beyond what her cooking had already earned her. Emmett simply nodded and said, "About time," while his wife Martha embraced Olivia warmly and promised to share all of Wade's childhood embarrassments at the first opportunity. As October gave way to November, their relationship deepened through shared work and quiet evenings by the fire. Wade proved to be a considerate suitor, attentive to Olivia's needs without being overprotective of her disability. He learned to recognize the days when her leg pained her most and adjusted plans accordingly, but never suggested she couldn't manage her responsibilities. For Thanksgiving, the entire ranch gathered in the dining room, the table extended with boards to accommodate all the hands and their families. Olivia presided over the feast with quiet pride, accepting compliments on her cooking and watching with pleasure as Wade, at the head of the table, led a simple grace thanking God for the year's blessings. His eyes met hers as he finished, and the love in his gaze made her cheeks warm. Later, as the men retired to the porch for pipes and conversation, Martha Hayes cornered Olivia in the kitchen. "He looks at you the way my Emmett still looks at me after 30 years, the older woman observed, helping wrap leftover turkey. "Like you hang the moon and stars." Olivia smiled, unable to deny it. "He's a good man." "The best," Martha agreed, "and you're good for him. Before you came, this was just a house. Now it's becoming a home." The words stayed with Olivia long after the guests had departed and the kitchen was returned to order. Home. She had lost one when her father died, but perhaps she had found another here, not just in the physical structure of the ranch house, but in the heart of the man who had seen value in her when others saw only limitation. The first major snowfall arrived in early December, transforming the ranch into a wonderland of white. Ranch work slowed with the season, giving Wade more time to spend with Olivia. They began riding out together on clear days, Wade patiently matching his horse's pace to her mare's more cautious steps, showing her parts of the Broken J she hadn't yet explored. During one such ride, they stopped at a small rise overlooking the eastern pastures. The land stretched out before them, pristine under its blanket of snow, the distant mountains sharp against the blue sky. "This is where I want to build," Wade said, gesturing to the flat area before them. "Build what?" Olivia asked, adjusting her scarf against the cold. "A new house." He turned to gauge her reaction. "The old one has served its purpose, but it was never meant to be permanent. This spot gets morning sun. It's sheltered from the worst winds and the view." He waved a hand at the panorama before them. "It's beautiful," she agreed, trying to picture a house nestled into the landscape. "I've been saving for it," Wade continued. "Have plans drawn up by an architect in Cheyenne. 4 bedrooms, a proper study, a kitchen twice the size of the current one." He looked at her directly now. "Room to grow into." The implication was clear, and Olivia felt her heart expand with happiness. "It sounds wonderful," It could be, he said softly. With you. That evening, as they sat before the fire in the study, Wade rose suddenly and left the room without explanation. When he returned, he carried a small wooden box that Olivia had never seen before. "I've been waiting for the right moment," he said, his usual confidence giving way to a touching nervousness. "Maybe there isn't one perfect moment, just the decision to take the leap." Kneeling before her chair, he opened the box to reveal a simple gold ring set with a single pearl surrounded by tiny diamonds. "It was my mother's," he explained. "She made me promise to give it only to a woman with her same strength of spirit." Tears blurred Olivia's vision as Wade took her hand. "Olivia Turner, I love you. I love your determination, your kindness, your ability to see beauty in this harsh land. I love the way you face each day on your own terms, never letting pain or prejudice define you." He took a deep breath. "Will you marry me? Will you build a life with me here at the Broken J?" Joy surged through her, bright and overwhelming. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes, Wade, I will marry you." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, then rose to kiss her, Olivia marveled at the journey that had brought her here. From the humiliation of that employment office in Opal to this moment of perfect happiness, all because one man had looked past her disability to see the person beneath. They were married on Christmas Eve in the ranch house parlor, with Reverend Simmons traveling from Opal to perform the ceremony. The room was transformed with evergreen boughs and red ribbons, candles glowing in every window to welcome the wedding guests. Olivia wore a dress of deep blue velvet that Martha Hayes had helped her make, with a collar of delicate lace that had once belonged to her mother. Wade, uncharacteristically nervous, appeared in a new black suit, his hair freshly trimmed and his face clean-shaven for the occasion. When he saw her enter the parlor on Emmett's arm, standing in for her father, the look of wonder on his face was worth every moment of doubt and pain that had preceded this day. The ceremony was brief but heartfelt, their vows spoken clearly before the assembled ranch hands and a few friends from town. As Reverend Simmons pronounced them husband and wife, snow began to fall outside the windows, as if nature itself were offering a blessing on their union. The celebration continued well into the night, with music provided by Miguel's surprisingly skillful fiddle playing and Charlie's harmonica. Wade and Olivia shared their first dance as husband and wife to a somewhat uneven rendition of "Beautiful Dreamer," her leg causing only a slight unevenness in their steps that Wade's strong lead easily accommodated. "Mrs. Jackson," he murmured as they moved slowly around the cleared space. "How does it sound?" "Wonderful," Olivia replied, smiling up at him. "Though I may need time to get used to it." "We have plenty of that," he assured her, his arms tightening around her waist. "A lifetime." Later, when the guests had departed and the house was quiet except for the crackling of the fire, Wade carried Olivia across the threshold of the master bedroom, now their bedroom, despite her laughing protests that she could walk perfectly well. "Humor me," he said, setting her gently on the edge of the bed. "It's tradition." "Since when do you care about tradition?" she teased, reaching up to loosen his tie. "Since I found one worth honoring," he replied, capturing her hand and pressing a kiss to her palm. "Besides, I've been wanting to carry you since the day you arrived at the Broken J." "Have you now?" Olivia raised an eyebrow, her heart quickening at his admission. Wade confirmed, sitting beside her, "but I knew you'd have objected strenuously at the time." "I would have," she agreed, leaning into him as his arm encircled her shoulders. "I was very determined to prove myself." "You did," he said simply, "to everyone, including me." He turned to face her fully, his expression growing serious. "Olivia, I want you to know I'll never see your leg as a burden, but I'll also never pretend it doesn't exist or that it doesn't cause you pain. If I ever become thoughtless about it, you must tell me." Touched by his sincerity, Olivia framed his face with her hands. "I will. And you must promise the same about your war memories, your nightmares. No secrets between us, no suffering alone." "I promise," Wade whispered, before drawing her into a kiss that sealed their vows more profoundly than any ceremony could have. Spring arrived at the Broken Jay with a riot of wildflowers and the constant activity of calving season. Olivia had settled into her role as Wade's wife with a joy that surpassed her expectations, finding that marriage brought a deeper partnership than she had imagined possible. Wade had proven to be a considerate husband, attentive to her needs without being overprotective. He learned to recognize the days when her leg pained her most and adjusted plans accordingly, but never suggested she couldn't manage her responsibilities. In turn, Olivia came to understand his moods, recognizing when the weight of the ranch pressed heavily on him, and when memories of the war cast shadows across his mind. They worked side by side during the day, her in the house managing the domestic affairs of the growing ranch, him in the fields and pastures overseeing the cattle operation. Evenings were spent in the study, reviewing the day's events and planning for the future, or simply enjoying each other's company before the fire. Construction on their new home began in April, with a crew from Cheyenne arriving to break ground on the site Wade had shown her during their winter ride. Olivia found herself riding out daily to watch the progress, offering suggestions about the placement of windows and the layout of her future kitchen. "You've got a good eye, Mrs. Jackson," the foreman told her after she proposed moving the pantry door to improve flow between rooms. "Most ladies just care about the fancy touches, not how a house actually works." "I'm not most ladies," Olivia replied with a smile, watching as Wade directed the placement of the foundation stones. "No, madam, you certainly are not," the foreman agreed respectfully. By June, the framework of the house was complete, its skeleton rising proudly against the Wyoming sky. Wade took Olivia through the partially constructed rooms, describing his vision for each space with an enthusiasm that made her heart swell. "And this," he said, leading her to a sunlit corner of what would become their bedroom, "is where I thought your dressing table could go, morning light for when you do your hair." Olivia leaned into him, overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness of such a detail. "It's perfect." Wade's arm tightened around her waist. "You deserve perfect." That evening, as they sat on the porch of the old ranch house watching the sunset paint the new construction in golden light, Olivia gathered her courage to share the news she had been keeping to herself for 2 weeks. "Wade," she began, her voice soft but steady, "there's something I need to tell you." He turned to her, concern flickering across his features. "What is it? Are you unwell?" "No," she assured him quickly. "Actually, quite the opposite." She took his hand and placed it gently against her still flat stomach. "We're going to have a baby." Wade went completely still, his expression shifting from confusion to wonder. "A baby? You're certain, doctor?" "Sanders confirmed it when I was in town last week," she said, watching his face anxiously. "I wanted to be sure before I told you." For a moment, Wade said nothing, and Olivia felt a flutter of uncertainty. Then, with a whoop that probably startled the cattle in the nearest pasture, he swept her into his arms, spinning her in a circle that left her breathless with laughter. "Careful," she protested through her giggles. "I'm in a delicate condition." Wade immediately set her down, his hands hovering protectively around her as if she might shatter. "I'm sorry, I didn't think, are you all right?" "The baby is perfectly fine," she assured him, amused by his sudden transformation into an anxious father-to-be. "We both are." The joy on his face was unlike anything she had ever seen, pure, unguarded happiness that made him look years younger. "When?" he asked, his hand returning to her stomach with reverent gentleness. "January, Dr. Sanders thinks." Wade nodded, his mind clearly racing ahead. "The house will be finished by then. We'll need to order furniture for the nursery. And you'll need to rest more, especially with your leg, Wade," Olivia interrupted, placing a finger against his lips. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time, including women with far greater challenges than mine. I will be careful, but I won't be treated like porcelain." He captured her hand and kissed it. "I know. You're the strongest person I've ever met. But you can't blame a man for wanting to protect his wife and child." "No," she agreed softly. "I can't blame you for that." As summer progressed into fall, Olivia's pregnancy became visible, her rounded belly a source of constant wonder to Wade. He took to reading medical texts borrowed from Dr. Sanders, peppering Olivia with questions about her comfort, and sharing alarming facts about fetal development that she finally banned from dinner conversation. The ranch hands treated her with a new kind of deference, rushing to carry things she would have managed easily and offering advice based on their sisters' or wives' experiences with childbearing. Olivia accepted their concern with good grace, recognizing it as the expression of affection it was. Martha Hayes proved to be an invaluable source of practical wisdom, having raised 5 children of her own. She taught Olivia to sew baby clothes and showed her how to recognize the difference between normal discomforts and warning signs that might require the doctor's attention. "Your leg will give you some extra challenges," the older woman acknowledged frankly during one of their sewing sessions. "But the good Lord made women's bodies clever. Yours will adapt." The new house was completed in October, just as the first snow dusted the mountaintops. Moving day was a community affair, with every hand on the ranch pitching in to transport furniture and belongings from the old house to the new. By nightfall, Olivia and Wade were settled in their new bedroom, a fire crackling in the stone fireplace that had been Wade's special surprise for her. "What do you think?" he asked, watching her explore the spacious room with its large windows and gleaming wood floors. "Is it what you imagined?" Olivia turned to him, her eyes shining with happiness. "It's better. It's a true home." The nursery adjoined their bedroom, painted a soft yellow, and furnished with a cradle Wade had commissioned from a craftsman in Cheyenne. Olivia spent hours in the rocking chair by the window, imagining the child who would soon fill the room with life. December brought heavy snows that transformed the ranch into a white wilderness. Wade increased the frequency of his inspections of the cattle, concerned about the harshness of the weather, while Olivia concentrated on making the new house a home, arranging Christmas decorations, and preparing for the holiday festivities that would mark their first anniversary. It was during one such storm, with wind howling around the eaves and snow piling against the windows, that Olivia felt the first pains. Too early, she thought with a flash of fear. The baby wasn't due for another 3 weeks. Wade was out checking the nearest herd with Emmett, not expected back until evening. Olivia tried to stay calm, telling herself that first babies often gave false alarms. But as the pains increased in frequency and intensity, she was forced to acknowledge that this was no false alarm. Martha, she thought. She needed to get word to Martha Hayes. But the path to Emmett's cabin was buried under snow, and the pain in her leg worse than usual in the cold weather made the prospect of walking there impossible. As another contraction gripped her, Olivia made her way to the kitchen, intending to signal for help with the triangle normally used to call the men to meals. But before she could reach it, a particularly strong pain doubled her over, and she felt a warm rush of fluid down her legs. Her water had broken. The baby was definitely coming, ready or not. With determined calm, Olivia gathered the supplies she would need: clean towels, scissors, the basin from her washstand. She built up the fire in the bedroom, filled a kettle with water to heat, and arranged pillows on the bed to support her during labor. Between contractions, she wrote a brief note explaining the situation, then tied it to the collar of Rusty, Wade's faithful cattle dog who had stayed behind at the house. Opening the door against the howling wind, she pointed the dog toward Emmett's cabin. "Find Wade," she commanded, knowing the intelligent animal understood more than most humans gave him credit for. "Fetch Wade." Rusty hesitated, clearly reluctant to leave her, but another firm command sent him bounding into the snow. Olivia closed the door, leaning against it as another contraction seized her. "Just you and me for now, little one," she murmured to her belly, stroking it gently. "But your father will be here soon." The next hours passed in a haze of pain and determined effort. Olivia drew on every scrap of knowledge she had gleaned from Martha and Dr. Sanders, positioning herself as comfortably as possible given her legs' limitations, breathing through contractions, and monitoring her progress as best she could. The storm outside mirrored the storm within her body, powerful, relentless, and beyond her control. As darkness fell, the contractions came harder and faster, leaving her gasping and praying alternately for strength and for Wade's return. When the door finally burst open downstairs, Olivia almost wept with relief. Wade's voice called her name, panic evident in his tone. "Upstairs," she managed between contractions. "Hurry!" He appeared in the doorway moments later, snow still clinging to his coat, his face pale with worry. Behind him stood Martha Hayes, her practical presence immediately calming. "Thank God," Olivia whispered as Wade rushed to her side, taking her hand. "I'm here now," he assured her, pressing his lips to her damp forehead. "I'm here." Martha wasted no time taking charge of the situation, examining Olivia with practiced hands and nodding with satisfaction. "You've done well, child. Baby's in the right position and you're nearly ready to push." Wade looked terrified at this news, but he stayed firmly at Olivia's side, supporting her as she labored, wiping her brow and murmuring encouragement when pain threatened to overwhelm her. "You can do this," he told her during a particularly difficult contraction. "You're the strongest person I know, remember." Olivia clutched his hand, drawing strength from his unwavering faith in her. "Don't leave me." "Never," he promised, his eyes never leaving hers. When the time came to push, Olivia found reserves of strength she hadn't known she possessed. With Wade supporting her back and Martha providing calm instruction, she worked to bring their child into the world. "I see the head," Martha announced after what felt like eternity. "Dark hair, just like its papa." Wade's grip on Olivia's hand tightened, his expression a mixture of awe and terror. "You hear that? Our baby has hair." Olivia managed a breathless laugh that turned into a groan as another contraction built. "Let's hope it has more than just hair." "One more big push," Martha instructed, positioning herself to receive the infant. "That's it, child, push." With a final, monumental effort, Olivia bore down, feeling the incredible sensation of her baby leaving her body. There was a moment of breathless silence, and then the room filled with the indignant wail of a newborn announcing its arrival. A boy. Martha declared triumphantly, quickly wrapping the squalling infant in a warm towel. "A fine, healthy boy." Wade made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob as Martha placed the baby on Olivia's chest. Tiny fists waved in protest at the cold world, a shock of dark hair plastered to a perfectly formed head, and eyes that, when briefly opened, revealed a deep blue that mirrored his father's. "Hello, little one," Olivia whispered, tears streaming down her face as she counted fingers and toes. "We've been waiting for you." Wade reached out a trembling hand to touch his son's cheek. "He's perfect," he said, voice thick with emotion, "just like his mother." As Martha bustled about completing the necessary post-birth tasks, Wade and Olivia remained in their own world, marveling at the miracle they had created. When the baby latched onto Olivia's breast for his first feeding, Wade watched with such tender pride that Olivia's heart felt close to bursting. "What shall we call him?" she asked softly. Wade considered the tiny face, now peaceful in sleep after his first meal. "William," he suggested, "after my father, William James Jackson." "William," Olivia repeated, testing the name. "Will for short, I like it." Later, after Martha had departed, insisting on returning despite the weather to inform the anxiously waiting ranch hands of the new arrival, and mother and baby had been cleaned and made comfortable, Wade stretched out beside Olivia on their bed, his arm protective around her shoulders. "You amaze me," he said, gazing at the sleeping infant nestled between them. "I thought I couldn't love you more than I already did, but watching you bring our son into the world." He shook his head, words failing him. Olivia leaned her head against his shoulder, exhaustion and joy mingling in equal measure. "We did it together, just as we promised." "Together," Wade agreed, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Always." As snow continued to fall outside their window, coating the broken J in a blanket of pristine white, the new family dozed in the warmth of their home, their futures interwoven like threads in the quilt that covered them. 5 years passed, bringing changes to the broken J that neither Wade nor Olivia could have imagined on that snowy night of Will's birth. The ranch prospered under their joint management, expanding its herds and reputation throughout the territory. The new house became a true home, filled with laughter and occasional tears, the center of a thriving community. Will grew into a sturdy, curious boy with his father's blue eyes and his mother's determined spirit. At 4, he was already insisting on helping with ranch chores, trailing after Wade with solemn concentration, or perching on a stool in the kitchen to assist Olivia with baking. He was joined 2 years after his birth by a sister, Emma Rose, whose arrival was considerably less dramatic than her brother's but no less joyful. With Wade's golden hair and a sweet disposition that masked a will of iron, Emma quickly wrapped the entire ranch around her tiny finger. On a warm June morning in 1889, Olivia sat on the porch of their home, watching Wade teach Will how to brush down his first pony, a gentle creature selected specifically for its patient temperament. Emma played nearby, building elaborate structures with wooden blocks that one of the hands had carved for her. At 30, Olivia had settled comfortably into her life as Wade's wife and the children's mother, but she had never surrendered her independence or her role in the ranch's operations. Her bookkeeping had expanded to include correspondence with cattle buyers and suppliers, and her kitchen regularly hosted gatherings that strengthened the broken Jaytikes ties with neighboring ranches. Her legs still troubled her, especially in cold weather or after particularly active days, but she had learned to manage the pain and to accept help when needed without feeling diminished by it. Wade had kept his promise never to treat her disability as a defining characteristic, balancing respect for her capabilities with practical assistance when appropriate. As she watched her husband and son together, heads bent over the pony's gleaming coat, a surge of gratitude washed over her. How different her life might have been if Wade hadn't entered that employment office in Opal 6 years ago, if he hadn't seen beyond her twisted limb to the woman beneath. "Mama, look." Emma's voice interrupted her thoughts as the little girl toddled over, proudly displaying a structure that bore some resemblance to a barn. "I builded it, built," Olivia corrected gently, admiring the creation. "And it's wonderful, sweetheart, just like a real barn." Emma beamed, blue eyes sparkling. "For horses," she explained seriously. "Like Will's pony." "A fine home for horses indeed," Olivia agreed, smoothing her daughter's golden curls. Across the yard, Will had mounted his pony with Wade's help and was sitting proudly in the saddle, his father's hand steadying him as the animal took a few tentative steps. "Look, Mama," the boy called excitedly. "I'm riding." "I see you, my brave boy," Olivia called back, smiling at his accomplishment. "Well done." Emma tugged at her skirt. "Me ride too," Olivia laughed. "When you're a little older, just like your brother." Wade led the pony toward the porch, Will clutching the saddle horn with determined concentration. "I believe this young cowboy wants to show off for his mama," Wade said, his eyes crinkling with amusement. "And I'm properly impressed," Olivia assured them both. "Such a fine horseman already." Will straightened with pride, then asked anxiously, "Can you ride too, Mama?" "With your leg?" The innocent question might once have stung, but Olivia had long since made peace with her children's curiosity about her disability. She and Wade had decided early on to answer their questions honestly, without shame or evasion. "Yes, darling, I can ride, though not as fast as your father. My leg makes some things harder, but not impossible." Will nodded, satisfied with the explanation. At 4, he accepted his mother's difference as simply one fact among many about the woman he adored. Wade's eyes met Olivia's over their son's head, love and pride evident in his gaze. After helping Will dismount and sending him off to help one of the hands feed the chickens, Wade joined Olivia on the porch, settling beside her and drawing Emma onto his lap. "Penny for your thoughts, Mrs. Jackson," he said, noticing her contemplative expression. Olivia smiled. "I was just thinking about how far we've come, how different things might have been." Wade nodded, understanding her reference without need for elaboration. "I think about that sometimes too, how close I came to not walking into that employment office that day." "What made you do it?" Olivia asked, realizing she had never questioned his presence there. "You'd already lost one housekeeper to marriage. Why were you looking for another in town rather than sending Emmett?" Wade was quiet for a moment, his hand absently stroking Emma's hair as she played with a button on his shirt. "Truth, I wasn't. I was in town to meet with the bank about a loan for expanding the north pasture. Walked by the office and something intuition, fate, God's hand, whatever you want to call it, made me stop and look in. And there you were, standing straighter than anyone else in the room despite that leg, fire in your eyes when Hodges gave you his excuses." He smiled at the memory. "I knew right then that you were someone special, someone who wouldn't quit when things got hard. The broken Jay needed that." "I needed that, though I didn't know yet how much." Olivia reached for his free hand, squeezing it gently. "Fate indeed. Or Providence," Wade suggested. Emma, bored with the adults' conversation, wiggled down from her father's lap and returned to her blocks. Wade shifted closer to Olivia, his arm around her shoulders. "Any regrets?" he asked softly. "About selling your father's place." After much consideration, Olivia had finally sold the homestead the previous year to a young couple eager to start their own farm. The proceeds had been invested in education funds for the children and improvements to the Broken Jay. "None," she said honestly. "That was my past. This is my future." She gestured to the ranch around them, to their children playing nearby, to the life they had built together. "Besides, I kept what mattered most: Pa's Bible, Ma's hairbrush, the memories." Wade nodded, pressing a kiss to her temple. "I'm glad. And I'm grateful every day that you took a chance on a taciturn rancher who didn't know the first thing about courting. Olivia laughed. You did well enough. Still do. As if to prove her point, he produced a small package from his pocket, which reminds me, happy anniversary a day early. Olivia took the package with surprise. Wade Jackson, are you becoming sentimental in your old age? 35 is hardly old, he protested good-naturedly. And maybe I am. You and the children have that effect on me. She unwrapped the gift carefully, gasping softly when she revealed a delicate silver locket. Opening it, she found tiny portraits of Will and Emma on one side and Wade on the other, expertly painted by an artist who had visited Opal the previous month. It's beautiful, she whispered, touched by his thoughtfulness. Help me put it on. Wade fastened the chain around her neck, his fingers lingering against her skin. I thought you might like having us close to your heart, even when we're not right beside you. I always do, she assured him, turning to kiss him properly. And you all are always in my heart, locket or no locket. The sound of horses approaching interrupted their moment. Emmett appeared around the side of the house, accompanied by a young couple in a small wagon. Visitors, Wade, he called. The Petersons looking to buy that bull you advertised. Wade sighed reluctantly. Duty calls. He stood, straightening his shirt. Don't suppose you'd like to handle this one. You're better at negotiating than I am. Olivia rose beside him, smoothing her skirt. We'll do it together. That bull is worth every penny you're asking, and I intend to make sure they know it. Wade's smile was full of pride and partnership. Together it is, then. As they walked side by side to greet their visitors, Wade's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining with the easy familiarity of long practice. Behind them, their children played in the sunshine, secure in the love that surrounded them. The broken jay had indeed healed, Olivia reflected, just as she and Wade had healed each other not by erasing their scars or denying their struggles, but by embracing them as part of the whole. By understanding, as Wade had said that fateful day in Opal, that sometimes what a ranch and a heart needed most was someone who understood struggle.